Okay, the recording has started. Leslie, go ahead.
Fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to our joint meeting of the Equity Board and also the Human Services Commission. Look forward to a great meeting with lots of shared information and some great insights. So I guess with that being said, we're calling the meeting to order at 6:12 p.m. Great.
Excellent.
Okay. And then are we wanting to acknowledge or request if there are any public comments for this evening? It looks like we do not have any this evening here in the audience in person. Do we have any online?
None from me.
We're going to do attendance.
Okay, thank you very much.
You got it.
So attendance, do we have any excused absences this evening for the Equity Board?
We have many excused absences from the Equity Board this evening, including Heather Youngs, Oscar Montano, and Quan Palmer, and so as well as our alternate Nisha Nair. And so both Kelly will be serving as a regular member this evening.
Fantastic. And then for Hannah, the chair, I'm assuming, of the Human Services Commission, do you have the role that you like to call for your commission?
Yeah, we're just going to call it a few excused absence here. We have Commissioner Manny Brown and Commissioner Hima Moibula, who is out for today, and the rest of the commissioners are here. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Great. We have our chair report, our first item.
All right, fantastic. So in honor of our very interesting agenda item to discuss the central Issaquah station alignment study in the draft evaluation criteria, I thought it would be very apropos to have an opening question in regards to transportation. So tonight's opening question is, what's one small transportation change that would make a big difference in your daily life? So let me restate that again. What's one small transportation change that would make a big difference in your daily life? Who would like to start?
Go for it.
As a parent, I would love easier access for students to be traveling back and forth from school and from local areas within the city. So as a parent, I didn't have to do so many trips just back and forth from school or from certain sports or club locations, like outside school district activities, that is. That would make my life a lot easier, less time on the roads, less traffic on the streets.
Absolutely. That's a great answer.
I can go. I would love to see more local options from the transit centers. So if I could park at the transit center on Highway 900 and know that there was a shuttle to go over to Costco or medical dental building type thing, and then back to my car, if there was more regular service.
Excellent. Who wants to go next with our what's one small transportation change that would make a big difference in your daily life?
Yeah, I agree with her. I go to UW, so I normally take either drive there or take the bus from Issaquah Highlands to UW. But it'd be nicer to see a local bus from Sammamish or one straight from Issaquah to UW instead of stops at Bellevue and such. But
I live right near the as yet unopened light rail station in the city of Seattle, right by Judkins Park. And it would change my daily life, not because I would ride it to work, unfortunately, for the next 40 years, but it would definitely change my day-to-day experience in my neighborhood. And I'm already starting to see those changes with Seattle putting in permanent parking in my neighborhood, which didn't exist, a few months ago. But just, I would hope to see fewer cars backed up along our street during rush hour as a result of that.
I have an odd one. I live on a dead end street, and for some reason Google thinks and the other mapping systems think that it's a through street.
Oh,
So everybody
shoot.
turns around in my driveway.
Oh.
I mean, 5-6 times a day.
Wow.
And of course, our driveway is sinking. So is our sidewalk.
Oh.
No. You
Oh, yeah. A couple people online.
There's a few of us. This is Trish. I'll go because I think I see a number 1 by my name. I would like to see a huge expansion of Metroflex. It's just a simple answer.
Go ahead, Ray. I think you probably can all see your numbers as well as we can, so feel free to
Yeah,
go.
I'm happy to go next. I do quite a bit of commuting to Seattle, and one thing that would prompt a transportation change is understanding my destination and how much parking will cost me. So,
Oh.
so that would make me say, Ray, you know what? You don't need to get in your car. You can go take that bus.
This is Maury Edwards, Human Services Commission. I would like to see some kind of a link between the Issaquah Transit Center down 900 to Renton and the Maple Valley Highway area. It's not there now. It doesn't exist. And there's a lot of people coming up 900. It would really make a big difference in the traffic coming through there.
Hi, my name is Kanal, and I'd have to say I have to agree with Varnica here. To go to Seattle, for example, only way to get there is a car. And I know like my parents don't trust me enough to drive all the way to Seattle. And even worse, have to try and find parking there. So definitely some kind of bus where they can just like more ease of mind. And then also I was thinking maybe some sort of public transportation to like the summit at Snoqualmie. I know like I went to Colorado over break and they had buses running from cities to Eldora. And I think it'd be great if we could establish some sort of system to take people up to the mountains. I know that's not really Issaquah, but just something to think about.
So yeah, Chris. Oh, can't hear you.
We can't. No, weird. We'll come back to you.
Looks like Karthik has his hand up.
Hi, yeah, this is Karthik. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to see sidewalks on all streets in Issaquah. I live on Squawk Mountain and often like to walk up the hill, and there aren't sidewalks on all streets, so it's kind of tricky navigating walking versus cars.
Hi, my name's Erin. I'm with HopeLink Mobility, and I know that the garage teen cafe has difficult time getting their teens to and from their building.
So I'll go next and just offer something that it doesn't affect me, but I always look around in my one-person driver as I go 15 minutes from my house to my office. And I'd love to see more bus shelters here in Issaquah. Seeing someone stand outside when it's raining in the dark, and I feel terrible for them. And I think that encouraging people to leave their cars, people like me, is making the entire experience taking public transportation more comfortable. So that is a, covered shelter where I can sit down with my bags. I know that that's the experience that most people want to have as well. So I like to see that.
Awesome. And then Chris shared he's having mic issues, but shared, like what Ray said, would love to know parking price ahead of time so I can see if it's better to drive or take the bus. That transparency is really helpful.
So I can go next. The thing that popped in my head, which is super minor, is wishing my son wouldn't park behind me in the driveway.
Probably takes about 10 minutes to say, can you please move your car? Then you have to wait.
might be the last one.
I was gonna say, is anyone else?
Well, I super appreciate this question. This is what I do all day. So I'd love to hear all these comments. For me, I live south of Dale, in Seattle, and I would love to have bike lanes on Rainier Avenue. It is very scary, so I do not bike to my light rail station, but I could. It'd be close enough for me to do that, but I don't.
But it is very scary.
It's very scary. Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't know, like my commute is pretty short, it's like 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So like it takes me longer to walk from the parking garage to my desk than it does to drive to. But oftentimes I'm like, it's so close, I wish I could like not have to drive, like I could just walk, but it's on the highway, so no plans on doing that.
Yeah.
Like some sort of shortcut, like from Newport Way to Costco would be nice.
Final attendee of the question.
Everyone, I want to welcome Manny Brown, Commissioner has joined us. We are doing a fun question. Do you mind repeating the question?
Not at all. Hi, Manny. I'm Leslie. So our opening question is, what small transportation change would make a big difference in your daily life?
Chauffeur?
That would be
Yeah.
Wow. Small transportation change. I'd love to see the light rail come through and be able to access it as easy as possible.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, I probably already said that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for answering very thoughtfully on our opening question. So thank you. Learned a lot about everybody through these questions. Thanks.
Excellent. We have one item of regular business for this evening. And I don't have any preamble for it. So, Thomas, welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate every opportunity I've had to meet with these groups. Let's see here. So you all are the first group I've taken this to. I guess there's two groups here, Equity Board and Human Services. I'm taking a version of this presentation 4 more times. And I'm sure this criteria will change in the next 2 months, but I appreciate you all being my guinea pigs for this. So I will be asking you just a couple questions. I'm hoping to get your feedback on this evaluation criteria. Gail has some copies and I have some massive copies if anybody wants bigger versions. But 2 questions I have are, does the criteria reflect the intent of the vision and guiding principles document that was adopted by council last year? And is there anything else that should be added that you see? So again, I think most of you have seen this before, but we are planning for light rail service in central Issaquah, specifically in this green area, which is the regional growth center. So my cursor here, this is like Costco corporate. This is obviously I-90. And then as we go down south, there's like the Issaquah Transit Center to the very south. And then there's stuff like Target and Safeway and all that. So it's a pretty big area. We're just thinking about this generally as the area that most of the growth in jobs and housing is going to be. So the next 20 years, we're going to have like something like 3,500 new jobs. So I'm getting my stuff mixed up. 8,000 jobs and then 3,500 like housing units. So growth is happening in the next 20 years, but it's all basically going to be here. And that is all assuming that we get light rail in 2044. So jobs and housing growth is sort of tied to investment in transit infrastructure to support that.
Is 2044 like estimated finalized or like starting?
2044 is what we've been quoted as of 2020.
Okay.
That's the date that Sound Transit can deliver it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Thomas, just can you go back one
Sure.
slide? And I couldn't tell, can you just kind of verbally say what those boundaries are? Maybe around, is it the green area?
Sure. Yeah. So this is like Evergreen Ford kind of area. And then this is the Issaquah Transit Center. There's like the fire department right here. This is Newport, and you know, there's like Target and Safeway and like REI over here. And that's kind of like the extent of where this is. And then this is all like Costco corporate. There's like Pickering Place. And then I think there's like the hotels are over here. And then there's like more hotels and office park over here. I think there's like a Microsoft building. Actually, we can mix it here. Yeah.
So, excuse me, so where would the station be itself?
We don't know that yet. Yeah. But we will get there. Yeah. So the point of this exercise is to talk about criteria that we think are important. And then the next time I come back, we'll have some ideas on station locations, and we'll show you how those match up with the evaluation criteria. And I'll just take another step back to say this is just like the city's preferred alternatives. And the goal of this whole exercise is to have a framework of how we think about like where a good station would be, and then have a preferred concept that we give to Sound Transit. And they're going to do their own analysis, but we're just kind of thinking about preemptively what are no-goes for us, what do we like, what do we don't like, where are areas that we've thought would be meeting our goals, and just show Sound Transit like our thought process so that they can come up with a solution that will work for us.
That's one of the options, walking distance to the transfer station now, the bus.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, we could, you know, we're thinking about all sorts of ideas. So let's maybe table that. And I'd love to get any like ideas for locations, but just want to think about the evaluation criteria, and like thinking about the transit center and sort of what that means is one of the criteria we're thinking about. Just at a very high level. Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'll just keep cruising through this. I want to save all the time you guys want to ask questions once I've kind of gone through this. But again, so I think most of you have seen this. This is Ski Link, South Kirkland to Issaquah light rail. So we'll be from South Kirkland station, which is basically the edge of Bellevue. It'll come through to the stations that were built last year. And then there'll be new stations at Richards Road, one at Eastgate, and then one at Central Issaquah at the very end. So Dale has some criteria that has been provided if you're in the room. Otherwise, it's attachment A. So thinking about the criteria, we want to make sure that we're not spending too much effort if something is just not going to work for us. So we have a two-step process. One is just to do a feasibility screening. Does it even make sense to build here? And then the second question to be answered is like, how does it align with the goals that we've said we have? So we would filter out all of the ideas that just don't make any sense and then not spend any more time on it. So feasibility, can it be built here? We're thinking about environmental considerations, the engineering details. So for example, Sound Transit has a goal of having their trains go 55 miles an hour down I-90. So if we can't reach that because our alignment is like too squiggly, then we'd want to like straighten that out. So just like things like that. There's a lot of examples of engineering things we would want to look at that I'm not super privy to, but we have consultants on retainer to figure that out. There's also the delivery and constructability component. As we're thinking about ideas, if we have an idea that sounds great, but contains a lot of unknowns, like the stars would have to align, or it's not like a super slam dunk option, it could be more difficult for Sound Transit to choose that unless like everything worked out really well. So we want to just flag it early on to say like, this is a great idea, but there are some like potential roadblocks that you'll want to think about. So that could add like project risk and therefore like be less likely that they would want to go with it. So we're trying to like flag things early on to the best of our ability and just like kind of track things that we have a reasonable understanding of. There's obviously going to be a lot of things that we don't know at this point, so we're not really tracking that. But like things that we know from previous examples of projects that have been built and like other sort of considerations. After that, we have a suitability analysis, thinking about like how well does it align with our goals. So we're thinking about transit-oriented development and like growth potential in Central Issaquah, which is something that we find really important. We're going to need a density of jobs and housing to support just taking a train. You just need like a lot of jobs and like a lot of things to do and places to go in the vicinity of where the light rail station is. So thinking about that now, but then also like in the future, I guess the walkable area around the station, like what could become like a good area to be. We also have just general like planning and policy consistency. So we have lots of goals that the city has, and there's like regional and like state goals. So making sure that a location that is chosen is kind of aligned with what we've said we want to do, and we have policies that even allow us to get money more easily from the federal government or like the regional government. Mm-hmm. So if we choose a location that is outside of that, that's kind of a stick for us versus the carrot could be it would be much easier to build it here because we already have lots of structures and like policies in place. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, I think probably the most important to most of us, we want to make sure that the light rail station is actually functioning as a light rail station, that it's like really easy to get to and people can use it to ride pretty easily. So making sure that the location is not going to create traffic jams and bottlenecks, and like make sure that it is walkable and like accessible. Sorry, I'm trying to advance my slide. Okay, so here's the feasibility criteria. You may notice that it looks a little different from what the packet had.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Sure. Yeah.
So is this it looks like there's an order. So first it's feasibility
right.
And why would it be feasibility first and not where it's most useful first?
Mostly we want to just vet out, like it could be really useful to build it somewhere, but if there are some like significantly fatal flaws that we can identify ahead, even if we like research the heck out of it, like if it still is not, if it's like a just infinitely expensive thing, there's no way we would even like think about doing it. Or like for example, Sound Transit has a dollar amount that they've said they will invest in the community. So if we come out and say, we have an idea that is 4 times what you've said you would invest, like that's that's just a non-starter. So like we wouldn't really want to dig in any further and spend like resources like researching that kind of thing.
So, but it sounds like you have feasibility and then you have suitability. Yeah, sustainability. And then is it useful? And it just feels, I mean, I understand the argument,
Yeah.
but you narrow it, and now we get to pick from the three that are useful.
Right.
Right? And that, I don't know, there's
Yeah.
something, just my thought.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on
Also,
that
you said that
approach?
the Sound Transit, investing,
Yeah.
is there a percentage or what's?
So we're basing our thought process on what has been like approved by the Sound Transit 3 voter package. I'm gonna get my dollar amounts wrong, but like we'll say like 200 million or whatever. We'll just say that. So that that dollar amount that was like sort of built into the assumptions in 2016, that is our starting point. So if we go beyond that, then we have to think about like who would pay for that. And that's kind of like the baseline that they're willing to, I'll say, invest or like put into the project of getting people to their light rail system.
So it's a dollar.
It's a dollar amount, right? Yeah.
So is that 2016 dollars or is it 2040, now 44? It was 41.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have to get back to you on the specifics. I think that was probably 2016 dollars, so it'd be like whatever it costs now.
Talking
Yeah.
30 years difference in investment and
Right.
interest and cost of living and
Right.
whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, the cost of construction has gone up a lot, even in the last 10 years. So yeah, definitely acknowledge that. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I was immediately drawn to that blue section where it says I-90 median and side running feasibility. I mean, any of us who've seen what's going on 405 South and the freeway gets shut down, are they leaning towards one versus the other at this point? I mean, looking at both options, if it's running down in the middle of I-90 or running to the side of it, especially in that 405 I-90 corridor, what research has been done in that area, just purely out of curiosity and not favoring one or the other? I mean,
Sure. So 2016, we're calling it the representative project. It was going along I-90, and then it comes south of I-90 into central Issaquah. So it is south of the median. So it's a side running station to the south.
Side running station. Okay, thanks.
And the point of looking at both of these is to just provide options. If we are too rigid in our criteria, it might preclude good ideas at this point. We're so early on that we just want to know generally if it would work to do one or the other.
The visibility criteria, I saw it looks like environmental engineering and project delivery, but I was wondering one of the categories you're also considering is like noise and impact that it will have, whether it's like construction or after the fact.
Right.
Because like, let's say like you do have an area that's able to be built and it also meets like suitability, but then it's actually impacting the people that live nearby. So I don't know if that's one of the areas to be considered before, rather than, oh, we identified it and now.
Right.
Or whether it's like new housing, like maybe it's not there right now.
Right.
If that would be like considered as part of the planning and policy, but also like visibility primarily versus suitability.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. When projects are in the environmental phase of the project timeline, those are all things that are looked at. And Sound Transit will be doing a very robust version of that. We're gonna do like a kind of minor version, so that we're not like kind of doing double work on that, but we want to roll out those sorts of things. So, example could be if it's an elevated station and we are like in a valley, like might people see the track from where they're at? And are there ways to like kind of mitigate, like could we like recover it somehow, or like could we have a wall to like prevent like sound from traveling? So yeah, those are all great things. And yeah, it might maybe makes more sense to kind of build that into the environmental category, or like kind of make that more clear. Yeah.
I want to jump on that, what JD just said, and that is who's getting displaced. Is that in this
Yeah.
feasibility? Okay.
Yeah, we want to look. That's kind of further down here. We're kind of thinking about like who exists today, and then like as if a station is located, sort of like what opportunities might be. With displacement, it's depending on the location, it could be like a large property, or it could be like smaller properties with like multiple sort of impacted people. So we want to kind of look at what that might look like. So I'll just go back to my feasibility criteria, just to see if there's any other thoughts on this. I'm also happy after this meeting, if you think of it, you can reach out. I'll be working on this for many months, so and you know how to reach me, hopefully, and if not, last slide on this has my contact information. So again, feasibility criteria, looking at environmental, engineering, and then constructability, and then we kind of drill down to suitability. So transit-oriented development potential, things that allow for a light rail station to be successful is that there's jobs and there's people around. So jobs density, population density. The Puget Sound Regional Council, that's like our governing body for the region. They even have targets that they like to see that we abide by. So that's kind of related to that. Having lots of land uses was something that the community specified as we were going through the vision and guiding principles. We want to have a lot of like fun things to do and like places to go, amenities that really support like just being able to, walk to the grocery store kind of thing, or just like all the little things that we kind of take for granted. We're also looking at like how much in the walkable area of the station would be developable if a station was there. So for example, if a station is located next to a hill, probably couldn't build on that hill, but you could build around like on the flat area outside of that area. So if the station was located elsewhere where like there was more like area that you could build, that could potentially be better. But then we'd want to think about like sort of other considerations. Growth and development phasing, that's thinking about like what exists today and what exists in the future. So are we solely thinking about an area that has nothing today, and like how long would that take to become something, versus if there's something already there and like already supports what the community needs, like how long would that take to like kind of grow even more? So starting from 0 or starting from like 10, we'll say. Then proximity to like community resources like parks, just like, yeah, just other things that in the community that are like not business oriented, but like are things that people appreciate, trails and that sort of thing. I talked about consistency with planning organizations. We're actually reaching out with all these organizations. We have a little working group that we work through. So that's kind of making sure that they have eyes on this and they see that this is consistent with what they've been planning for. And then we have zoning that allows for growth and jobs and housing, so making sure that it aligns with that. And then lastly, we have access. So, Manny mentioned, I believe, talking about the transit center and like sort of what that means. So we want to make sure that, we already have a transit center. There's parking there. There's buses there. The bus bays are massive compared to the actual transit service we have. There's so many areas to park buses there. And so thinking about like what that means, could that be useful to the light rail station? And like, could that be sort of built into how the connective buses are getting people to the light rail station? And then we did a I-90 crossing study, kind of finished that up recently. So thinking about like how that might integrate, how that might be compatible with any light rail station. I talked about with my thing that I shared earlier about like how it would be nice to have bike lanes. So like having a low stress bike lane to get to the light rail station would be nice. And then just making sure that there's sidewalks and like we're able to walk there. Yeah.
Senator, not to bring this up, this country has a history of misplacing and displacing low-income, marginalized people, and where does that come in on this?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, you're not going to take Microsoft CEO's house.
Yeah.
But people have as much pride in their home, no matter what the cost is and what they're paying for, as does a Microsoft CEO.
Yeah.
So where does that come in?
Yeah. For Central Issaquah specifically, we really don't have any housing units. So I guess good or bad, there may not be that much risk there. But we do acknowledge that with better light rail systems and like, investment in Central Issaquah, that could lead to renters being pinched, folks that don't own their property. That's something that is, we see in other communities. Redmond is a good example. They're trying to be proactive about, not only just like on the housing front, but also businesses, small businesses that are just trying to like hang on as the community gets a little bit more expensive. And so there's a lot of like government actions that could be taken. Redmond got a grant last year and like had a whole study done, and they've started to implement. There's like I think 10 or so different policies and things that they're doing. So we're kind of like in a good spot here because we can see how it plays out in other communities and like try to be proactive, with that. Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're just kind of in the ideation phase. But yeah, certainly acknowledge that like with investment can cause increases in like home prices and like cost of living. Yeah.
But can that be reflected in the criteria?
And that's exactly what I was thinking, Kelly, that maybe that can be kind of a hard stop in terms of the suitability and feasibility, that if zoning is going to equal that, there are going to be displacement of folks that either are living in apartments, that's going to have an impact on either minority communities, seniors, vulnerable populations, that location likely be rejected, because to trade one issue to improve, to then displace people to create a new issue, and a city that's already very high priced to live in and has a dearth of affordable rental properties or just affordable housing properties. I think that's a consideration that needs to be looked at very hard.
That sounds great. Yeah. And I should have mentioned earlier. So we have in our feasibility criteria this environmental justice component, which I totally lost my train of thought previously, but this is not what you saw posted online, but it's something that I added because I realized I forgot it in this. This is a screening that will be done, and I have it later in the slide deck, so I'll just go there quickly. The environmental justice equity screening ensures that there's not going to be disproportionate impacts to low-income BIPOC communities. So that is part of our environmental review process that will be done. So we're going to highlight if one option versus another is like resulting in unequal access or just disproportionate impacts. So certainly that is very, very important to us, and is kind of built into our initial feasibility screening.
I did have a question on that, which is, you mentioned that it would be a high-level assessment for equity and environmental justice. So do you have any ideas at this point what groups or community members or any types of groups that would be involved in that high-level assessment?
I don't, but I would love to get your feedback on that. Yeah.
Because I think that a cross-section of individuals, just purely from an equity standpoint. So we're thinking about obviously minority populations. We're thinking about senior adults, anyone that may have a physical mobility challenge, any of those individuals that may not be always at tables that are making decisions about how they move about the city. So I think that engagement with those groups as part of that high-level assessment is very critical.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And thanks for adding that, but it wasn't in our original.
Yeah, I apologize. It was right after the holidays, and like I remember sending a message to Dale and be like, "Wow, like this all came out." And, like, so yeah, when
I think the three of us were three of maybe 15 people who were online.
Yeah.
On the 30th of
yeah, it was a skeleton crew for sure. Yeah, so yeah, I do apologize if that wasn't in the initial.
My only concern, as Leslie missed, is the definition of high level. Right.
Yeah.
Again, those are not included in a lot of things, or not considered high level.
Yeah. I think so. What I meant by high level is that there's an environmental impact study that is done that is like thousands of pages long. It is a huge document, and you can see that in all of Sound Transit's projects. We just don't have the scope to do that, so we want to do like an initial screening, and we also don't have all the information at this time. But we do want to do a thorough job to make sure that we're like, to the best of our ability, like understanding what these impacts will be. So I think it's great we can come out to the community and like chat with people to try to like backfill information that we don't have data on. But yeah, we do have a very limited budget, but we do have, ultimately at the end of this, we'll have this criteria that specifies our intent. So, locations, if when Sound Transit is doing their more thorough review, if they catch something that we don't because they have more budget to do that, then that's, it would show that this is important to us.
So is part of their review, I'm sorry, it's taking a lot of time, but as part of their review, taking note of which areas and the cost factor of homes as they move down this track?
I'd have to get back to you. I'm not, so you're talking about like cost of living increases and like
yeah,
like,
I mean, rate of mortgages, I mean,
yeah,
it'd be different than, if they decide to go this route,
yeah,
and the whole corridor is low income as compared to this other route where it would affect medium and.
Right. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that their study would do that, but I'd have to double check. So I do want to get back to you on that. Yeah. Okay.
Thomas Ray has his hand up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ray.
Hi, Thomas. I can't remember when you presented last if there was a survey sent out to residences who'd consider this. Was there one? Before I ask my next question, I wanted to ask that first. Were there numbers shared about a survey as far as who would actually use this, like percentages of residents in Issaquah at any level?
Sorry. So is it you're asking if
If a light rail station were to be built in Issaquah,
Right.
was there a survey sent out that Issaquah residences or neighboring residences, whether that be North Bend or others, would use the facility for the service?
there has not been
Okay.
surveys, no.
And the reason I ask that is it leads to my next question. I think from a human services and an equity perspective, there's no argument against this. I mean, everything's being done correctly to assess the environmental impact. But what I would be wondering is down the road when the facility is actually built, what's going to change somebody's mind from getting in their car and versus parking at the transit center and using the light rail. So it's those things that we would ask ourselves saying, oh yeah, I would use that instead of getting in my car because one, it's faster, it's more efficient. So those are the things that were just rolling around in my head. If I were somebody that were going to put the funding into this, I'd want to make sure that people are going to use it. Utilization is going to be there downstream.
Yeah, in transportation planning, there's like a lot of emphasis on like the economic kind of drivers. A lot of you mentioned that like you'd like to know how much parking costs, so you can think about like if you want to take the bus or not. Similar things like these. Those sort of assumptions are built into travel demand models that Sound Transit will use. And so we kind of as a catch-all, we talk about potential transit ridership generally as a suitability criteria. We have a consultant team that can kind of qualify what that means, but it has to do with all of the built-in travel demand model pieces, like cost of gas, how much parking costs when you get there, like the time it takes you. I'll just get in a little bit of weeds here. So there's a household travel survey that goes out every couple years. Previously, we had data from like COVID era. But like last year, there was a survey that was done that we are now squarely outside of like the COVID era. So those assumptions are then built into the travel demand model that we all use in the region. And like that sort of feeds into people's willingness to like drive versus take transit. And some people just will not want to take transit at all. And like we can kind of model that a little bit. But also we're thinking about in the future, 20 years from now, maybe people's preferences change. So kind of thinking about like how that might affect how we place a station and like sort of what parking demand might be, for example. So
yeah. And one other comment, I mean, I would challenge myself and our colleagues here to start these conversations with people that you speak with. It's like, hey, do you know that Issaquah is thinking about putting a light rail station here? Oh, how do you get to Seattle or point A to point B? And if we did have one here, would you use it? And I would ask them the question, well, why not? And maybe we can share some of that feedback with you. That question.
Thomas, I think I'm just struggling with one aspect of it is the feasibility portion feels very much physical and environmental, but then there are some human components that I'm struggling with because I almost feel like the feasibility should be fully physical and environmental, like things that engineers and planners just have this data, geography, GIS stuff coming in very rigid, like this is the answer, boom. And then the suitability to me is more of the heart, the human impact, which is also part of the environmental justice part. Yeah. And so but in the suitability, there are some things that are kind of more checkboxy. That's not a discussion, a heart, or how are we going to adapt or change for them?
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, so I'm just having a hard time because I'm looking at suitability. I'm like, I feel like some of it is not enough heart in there to see how are humans going to be impacted on their, the price of housing, how are we driving away some of the more affordable housing, all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's in there embedded. I'm just not seeing it clearly.
Okay. Yeah.
And so if I'm not seeing it clearly, it feels like, I don't know how much I expressed it.
Sure.
So
Okay.
I think maybe if we clarify some of the wording
Yeah.
in there just to make it more accessible to all, so then it feels like, okay, this was built for all people in Issaquah, rather than there are certain things hidden and not as transparent within this plan.
Okay. That sounds great. Yeah. Thanks for that feedback.
And tell us what I say, I personally think it's needed. I agree that there needs to be a human side to it. Because when we talk about high levels, we are talking about engineers, we're talking about surveyors that I don't believe that they take into effect what happens to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a couple of things as well. I think the why it matters section throughout here is really important. And I appreciate that you've talked about equity being cross-cutting throughout things, but I worry that if it's cross-cutting and it's not, the words aren't here, it's going to become invisible.
Okay.
So we're not there yet in terms of just accepting. I think cross-cutting is, so I would try to weave it into why it matters a lot more. And then I think what I'm hearing come up, around I feel like there's this time horizon component that might be in some of these categories. Like if we're thinking about differential impacts or differential harms, benefits, things like that, there's like the current state, and then there's projecting out, okay, in 20 years, I'm thinking about gentrification and the inequitable impacts of gentrification over time. So is there any modeling around what might happen there? And I think, it's around like small businesses if it's not housing, but it could be housing affordability and pricing out, certain people from being here. The businesses might be, appealing to certain members of the community or other reason that could have long-term impact on diversity, inclusion, and things like that. So I'm curious, like gentrification was the thing that really popped out to me. What does this mean in 20 years time? And some of this is a little bit like you make the siding decision, you build, and then you try to mitigate things, but that mitigation, who knows if it's going to happen? It's like for all of us. So I don't necessarily trust that mitigation is going to be equitable.
Right.
Yeah. The other one, just an observation that I noticed is in the guiding principles, equity isn't in there. There's like diversity, inclusion, maybe belonging, but I didn't see the words equity there. So I think the more you can build it into the criteria and the descriptions, it'd be more reassuring.
Sure. Can I ask a follow-up question? Would you like to see an equity criteria? It sounds like yes, right? Like so that we're making it. I've come to this group before and I've heard not to do that because we don't want to have like a very like performative kind of situation. But I also acknowledge that like equity is related to making sure that people can walk to the spot and that like the communities that are within walking distance and beyond have like good options. So, that's kind of like where I'm getting at. It's like it's cross-cutting. Yeah.
I agree with the spirit of it because I don't think it should be a separate stream, on its own.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be embedded in how we do our work.
Right.
That's where, but in that sense, like job density, population density, there's like each of those categories has some sort of analysis around like differential impacts,
Right.
harms, things like that. So it should be in everything.
Okay.
And that's where I'm wondering if and why it matters. Like if you're very explicit about those things, so that way when these analyses are happening, people, you don't know who all is going to be involved,
Yeah.
are making sure that they're looking at, so it doesn't get away across the different categories.
Preeti, would you be okay if it didn't say equity, but it said what it meant? Like who is being impacted, what job density or that defining? Because for me, then the next step is going to be how we evaluate this. And so
Yeah.
creating the tool. So I'm wondering if why it matters as for each of those sections has something about what are we thinking about, so that when we're creating the a tool, a rubric to see how is job density or population density being impacted, there's something as to what are we looking for, like look for section.
I think so. It may be highlighting what are particular, populations of interest or something like that.
Because I don't think I care as much as having the word equity
Yeah.
added, more off to what are we looking at, because to many people it means,
Operationalizing. Yeah.
And so I think for me, I'm looking more for the look fors maybe, and maybe that's just a different column, one more column that will eventually, and maybe you're not there yet. But I think my main thing also is the human impact for sustainability and being very clear that for me, I see the feasibility as more engineers and all of these people are going to deal with it, whatever, sound transit. And then they're going to give us areas that's possible, feasible, and from there, we're going to look at how is it impacting humans to build it at certain locations. And then we're going to be doing a lot more why it matters, and look for the rubric.
Yeah, and it could be, like why it matters for these different groups of humans, and who would benefit, who would be harmed, what's the magnitude. Yeah.
I was gonna say, Commissioner Jaime, in terms of, you mentioned like Redmond already kind of having some kind of ways to kind of learn and grow, right? That might be a good opportunity to say, what are some of the inequities they've kind of already kind of seen, heard, right? They've kind of went to the community, and that might kind of assist to kind of drive some of the criteria. You know what I'm saying? So when you come back, say, hey, actually, just say Linwood, for instance, too, right? You can say, hey, here's some things that kind of have risen to the point that have caused a lot of inequities. And I think for audience purposes, you'd be like, and we've kind of vetted this through a couple of groups. Here's some things we're doing to kind of mitigate those inequities as a group, as a collective, and we're being mindful as we move forward and present to different audience, to the Sound Transit. And then you can actually even put it on them a little bit, like, hey, here's some things that we've kind of talked about and ways we can kind of mitigate. I'm just thinking about tangible, in terms of reaching out to other folks.
Yeah. Yeah, part of my struggle here is that this criteria is it is meant to help us sort alternatives. So part of my struggle, and like I agree with everything that's been said about making sure that we sort of identify who's benefiting, who's potentially harmed, and like downstream effects and all that. Where we're at with this criteria is like, how do we? It's going to take some thinking on my end to see like how this would be like helping us choose one or another with the sea of options. If we acknowledge that like some things might happen and like I'll need to think about this a little bit and like how to build into this criteria. It could be that this is like a standalone thing that is sort of like not only woven through here, but it includes discussions on like the why it matters outside of this table format. So I'll need to think about how to like kind of structure all this, but I super appreciate these comments. They're very important, and we want to get this right. So yeah.
Thomas, with the feasibility side of it, how many feasible siting options do you expect would emerge? Like, is there gonna have, what are the alternatives to be evaluated?
We have a very limited budget. We do appreciate that City Council gave us some money for this, but we're going to look at like about 6 alternatives total. Yeah, if there's some things that are just like completely non-starters, we want to like eliminate those early so that we can do the suitability analysis and really dig in more. There's a lot more criteria here that we want to like really focus on. So, yes.
So is there a cost factor as far as what's expected to run in today's dollar?
Yeah, I can look into that. And I will acknowledge that like Sound Transit is currently facing some like financial issues. Many of you may have heard this. So we're kind of in this like holding pattern a little bit. We're like kind of it's a wait and see. But I can, at a minimum, I do plan on getting back to you on like what that cost figure was assumed from ST3 and if that was like today's dollars or not.
Yeah, you moved it from 41 to 44, which makes me a lot older than.
Right, yeah.
Trying to take advantage of it
already. My kids will probably take my keys away, so I'll probably use it.
Yeah, 44 is what they said would be like the affordable time frame. That's what they said in 2020, but since then there's been additional discussions. So yeah, our goal is to get it as soon as possible, and like that's why we've spent so much effort doing this. We're vetting out options so that they don't have to. We're having these community conversations so that we have a like pretty clear framework of what we're thinking about, taking away lots of like the risk involved. Like so many of these projects have been delayed because like people just aren't talking to each other, and like there's new ideas that come out. Like if we can just get this all out and like take care of it now, we won't be the issue, like why it's taking so long, and like we'll make it super easy. That's why like Redmond got their station. They made it super easy for Sound Transit, and like obviously the issue on like the bridge is not Redmond's fault, but like Redmond did what they could, and like now they have a station, and there's like decent amount of riders, and once it opens, there's going to be a lot more. So yeah.
Honestly, nearly everyone I've spoken to, and even at other meetings that I've seen, people are super excited about this. So we are very happy to be part of the group to help this along. And we don't want to be part of the problem to slow this down. I just want to make sure you recognize.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I love talking to everybody, and like this group especially, both groups. Yeah, I get a lot of good feedback, and like this really like puts wind in my sails. I really enjoy this project. So yep. Cool. So I did have 2 questions. I think we kind of covered this. And it sounds like, okay, so does the evaluation criteria reflect the priorities outlined? It sounds like sort of weaving in equity throughout this, highlighting sort of like the why it matters more. It sounds like some more work needs to be done on this. There was a discussion on sort of the human element, and something I should mention that I'm putting, what's not included. There's some like design and placemaking things that are within my cursor. Yeah. So within the community connection and values, a lot of these things will be sort of designed as a station is located. thinking about like where the entrance of the station actually is, and like what amenities, if there's like a pedestrian plaza, or like if there's like other sort of things that allow for like community gathering. These are all details that like will be much further down the line that we still think are important. So we're gonna, keep them in the vision and guiding principles. But at this stage, like we couldn't really meaningfully differentiate one location or another at this stage. But just things we want to take care of. So all that to say, I think there's, you've mentioned a lot of things that we can add back to this criteria. I have a lot of notes here. And yeah, I think you've mentioned what should be added. So.
Now, are you going to be on the higher level with this decision making?
Will I be? What do you mean by that? Yeah.
I mean, when it comes down to, you have a vote on which direction this is.
Yeah.
It's going.
I am at the staff level, so I can recommend and I can share as many details as I have, but I'm not the decision maker. It's going to be up to the city council on this. What we decide is the preferred alternative, and then what we decide is the evaluation criteria. But on top of that, Sound Transit Board is the actual decision maker. So we are here to sort of filter community thought on the best idea. We're gonna kind of champion that idea, and then our brain, our thought process will also be provided, and then it'll be a matter of kind of influencing and making sure that Sound Transit knows where we stand on things. Yeah.
So you're the messenger. We won't shoot you, right?
I would appreciate it if you did. Yeah.
Thomas, is there a day that we are trying to get this information ready to the city council so they can vote and pass it on, so that we're on schedule for the 2044 date?
For the evaluation criteria or for the final product? Yeah, so as of what we know now, we're still shooting for the end of this year. That could change, but yeah, that's we're rolling with the information that we have at this point. We're having constant contact with Sound Transit. They, just to be totally transparent, their ST3, their Sound Transit 3 package that includes this project will be updated based off the new financial realities that we have. And that'll be sometime in Q2 of this year. So we're kind of in real time trying to figure out what timelines are for things. And once we know more information, we might adjust the schedule of this project. But at this point, what we're doing today has no bearing on their timeline. So yeah.
What about a timeline to finalize this criteria and for your group to decide between the 6 locations?
Yeah. So because we know that Sound Transit is going to update their plan by the end of Q2, we should definitely be finished up with this by the end of Q2. If anything changes, we want to make sure that our criteria is in lockstep with those changes. If not that much changes, we'll be in a good spot to continue this. But yeah, ultimately, this whole package that we provide should be evergreen, and it should kind of match the latest knowledge that we have. So we'll just, if they change anything, we'll change alongside it. But yeah, at this point, those changes have not been made. Nothing's changed in our strategy, so we're just going to keep moving.
So I'm thinking midsummer, June or midsummer.
Yeah. So probably July-ish for this at the latest, I would think. Yeah.
And right now, Thomas is scheduled to be back with us in June.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I will be going to 4 other boards and commissions. There'll be a lot of opportunities if anybody wants to go to those meetings to provide public comment. And I'm also, here's my contact information, and I've been meeting with so many people, and I'm happy to meet with any of you one-on-one if you want. Really enjoy all the chats we've had, and it really does help provide context and like a lot of group knowledge for this. It's a group project, I'd say. Yeah, it's a group project.
And then just like some small points, I just wanted to go over, like Ray mentioned before, like I see like aligning station locations with like community goals related to like this, and this, but like I'm not seeing like where those community goals are coming from or like community input with things like that. And then another one was like in the suitability assessment, it talks about like station locations can influence like housing and services over time or like urban centers over the long term, but I'm not seeing like the difference between like how it would affect long-term versus like current residents or like low-income residents and like services today versus like 2020 or 2044. But that was just like some points I
Okay, sounds good. I'll try to be more explicit. That was a theme that we've heard, is like it's not giving enough human impact. So when I come back to future groups and when we finalize this, we'll just want to like sort of detail more about like sort of what that means and like making sure that like it's clear that equity is like interwoven and all that.
I think it was, Lorna, was it you that said like almost like a what it looks like column?
Look for.
Yeah, look for us.
You know, one thing of the geography here, that central Issaquah map, I don't know how sensitive some of these things are going to be to that small geography anyways.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's, I mean, as we kind of look at this area, it's a lot of big box, lots of parking lots,
Wetlands.
lots of wetlands, which obviously, yeah, a lot of areas that we just simply cannot touch, and we'll know that through the feasibility criteria. And so beyond that, we're gonna think about like, you know, the walkable area will probably be outside of this box. And so that's gonna be interesting. I think probably more interesting to think about like the sort of sphere of influence outside of where the station goes. So we'll want to look at kind of wherever the station ideas are, like kind of call it a buffer around that and kind of what impacts that might have. So
The lower left-hand corner, is that Talus area?
sorry.
Yeah, I think that would be Talus. And then to the right, would that be the woods?
Yeah.
Yes, Issaquah Valley. And then like this is like Old Town down here.
Okay, okay, awesome map.
Great.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have one more agenda item, which is our closing thoughts. So I'll hand it back over to our chair.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dale. I want to thank Thomas very much for the great presentation and answering a lot of very detailed and pointed questions in a very thoughtful way. We certainly appreciate it. And it seems like I think this is a great meeting between Equity and the Human Services Commission, in that I think we're pretty simpatico on the issues that I think really have come to the fore, which is we want to make sure that we have the human considerations being considered as part of the central Issaquah transportation plan. And we also want to have a running theme of equity through everything that's done in support of this program. I mean, when it comes down to it, the transportation plan is about making sure growth, mobility, and opportunity to move together so that everyone in Issaquah, regardless of age, ability, or income, can safely and reliably access the places that matter in their daily lives. I think one of the greatest parts of this conversation tonight is we don't want, I think, as a commission and as a board, to create any unintended negative consequences. And those could be displacement of either small businesses, doing anything to move the affordability numbers up on housing. And also the consideration of, we don't want to displace any type of either BIPOC communities, vulnerable communities. I'm a strong advocate for senior communities just by virtue of what I do for a living. So we want to be in consideration of equity, human services, and understanding that Central Issaquah Transportation Plan is super important for our future growth. But we want to make sure that we always are thinking about what equity looks like in service to, and also the human services aspect looks like in the future of moving this project forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Thomas.
With that.
Okay, well, it looks like our joint meeting of the Human Services Commission and the Equity Board has concluded at 7:28 p.m. on Wednesday, January the 7th, 2026.
Oh,
Yeah, I got all that in.
okay.
Thank you very much. It's a wonderful meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.